Bayan, again, that is the chain reaction to the first question is, if I have the Bayan that I like to play on, then to start with, I have the open tone that I like. And hopefully the resonance that I need to have. Then the thickness of the skin is an important thing. Of course, the CID is an important thing. So all that comes together, and then my ability to be able to extract the kind of sound that I visualize coming out of that instrument, combining all that together is the process that starts how my Bayan should sound. So if I have that much resonance, and when I have that much resonance, I can play with it, you know. So I have that much give on the skin, so I'm able to get tones out of it. So that's my sa, and then I have the scale available to me. But to be able to get to the point of where do I want to go? So to be able to find the notes, I need to know how much pressure I am applying to get to that note. And that is something that comes from practice, from knowing. So that is one of the things that has to happen. Secondly, they say something about the strength in the wrist. That determines your ability to be able to extract from the Bayan emotional element, right? So I mean, half the time I've noticed Tabla students playing from the small end of the gab and the kinar over here, and there are a couple of reasons for it. One is that you're able to get an attack sound better. It's easier to get the Bayan to respond from there, as opposed to the Maidan being bigger, which is how the old maestros used to play. That all changed, I think, around the time of Gudai Maharajji, Pandit Shanta Prasadji, that is, who played from this shorter end. But he manipulated that in a way where the slide became an important part of the Bayan. So slide. If I'm playing from the big Maidan, that is a much more distance to travel for the slide than it is from the shorter end. So for me, the slide is the second option. The first option is pressure. So if I'm playing, I'll be going. Short hand, 13, 14. So you notice attack is much more prominent. When you turn it to the Maidan here, the attack is more rounder, and therefore you have to work harder to get the punch. But it's a rounder sound. So if you were playing Gudai Maharaj Ji style, how the Bayan is to be played. Gudai Maharaj Ji's Bayan was tighter. A lot of the tabla students today, they like to have a tighter Bayan because it responds much more. Pandit Kishan Maharaj Ji, although was another kind of a tabla player, whose Bayan was, he used to hit the Bayan very hard, very hard, very hard, to the point where it sounded like oh, oh, oh. And we used to wonder, wow, there's no resonance, how is he going to do it? But this is where his strength was. And he would press it in and get that juice out of the Bayan. And so that his playing was different and his Bayan was lower. And so on those old sound systems of India, where there was really no bass available, it sounded very impressive because the Bayan was already low. But you had to work hard to be able to get any sound out of it. In today's world, with the sound system so good and the volume that you can get out of it, if the Bayan is very low, the sound gets muddy because it's just, and unless you have the ability to be able to dig in a la Kishan Maharaj Ji and extract those kind of notes out of it, it will all sound very woo, 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 woo. So therefore, today's tabla players like to have the Bayan tuned up and put a lot of sticks in and play it that way, get the resonance and then just work with that. So myself, I like to have a Bayan which allows me both possibilities. That is the resonance, the give in the skin, and once I have the give in the skin, to be able to have the thickness of the siyahi just so that it makes it possible for an old man like me to be able to push hard and get tones out. Like when I used to play in the Bombay film industry, one of the things that you had to learn was how to get the punch out of the Bayan, because here is tabla player, across facing the tabla player is the dholak player. This side is a side rhythm like bongos or something, and this side is a percussion player like a kanjari or clave sticks or a triangle or whatever. So there, and one mic like that far up for all of us. So therefore there was no such thing as playing because from the sound booth, the recording engineer would say, Zakir, thoda punch chahiye, thoda punch dena, to Bayan ka punch chahiye. So that means the tabla player and the dholak player had to provide the punch. It didn't come from the microphone. So they played like, you know, the dholak players and the qawwali tabla players play, which is not but. So they punch like that. So we had to do that like 5 hours a day for a song, and it was kind of tough on the hand and tough on the fingers to be able to do that, but that's what we did. So I like to have a tabla which has the give on the skin, the siyahi, just so that there's not too heavy, thick siyahi that does not allow me to be able to press the skin so much. In the old days, the maestros used to say, "Mota siyahi lagana," because it was considered you know, what an amazing thing that with that kind of a mota siyahi or mota atta, the tabla player could still press the bayan. I mean, that was like, kya baat hai. And they would wear iron bracelets to practice. I mean, that's the story that I've heard. So for tonal ability, strength here, which allows you Bayan is new and it's a little tight. When I play more and more, I don't get to actually, you know, what I'm doing all week, very busy with the granddaughter Zora and cooking and all that. By the way, just 2-3 days ago, I made lamb keema aloo butter. Came out very nicely, and so we are all cooking at home and all sorts of stuff. So the only time I get to play the tabla is when I'm with you. So once a week. So it hasn't yet settled in. When it does, it'll have much more of a give and will settle at a pitch that I want, from where I can press further down and still get the resonance. But this needs to be available. They used to say that the old maestros of Delhi, when they played the kaida, and they kept playing after like a year, not a year, about 6 months or so, they used to make a hole in the bayan where the fingers play. That's how much they dug in with their fingers. And I've heard that same stories in Punjab and so on. I've seen it happen too. It happened to me once. I was playing with Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, and a hole developed right here. So I switched and I kept playing here. The hole was here, then the hole kept expanding. Khan Sahab, of course, with his head down, wasn't aware of what's going on, and he's playing. And by the time we got to the jhala, all this was open, total ventilation, and I was playing at this end just to be able to, you know, keep the baya, you know, element in the patterns going. And when we finished and Khan Sahab looked at my baya, he started laughing. He said, "Why didn't you tell me what to tell you?" So anyway, that does happen. So Bayan development, fingers, I was talking about it at that practice session we did earlier, developing. So you have to develop the Bayan in a way where it is an equal participant with the tabla. Then, and not just that, you see, you have to realize this tabla projects more. Tabla projects more. Bayan being a bassy sound, it does not project naturally. So that projection and that balance between the two has to come from you as a tabla player. So that's important. But don't try to take an easy way out. I mean, yes, we do have the sound system and all that is there. Oh, there are bass pada, then I'll raise the bass a little bit, give me a little bit of high mids so that all this comes through so I can play as soft as possible. That's okay in the concept. But at least when you're doing your riyaz, dig in. Play with the resonance of the bayan. Really. So 13, 14, 15, 16. one way of playing it. The other way of playing it, sorry, turning sideways. And the way I work with the Bayan is the first way. Get involved, get some, it's like, okay, you come home after the concert and you can say to yourself, oh yeah, I did some hard work today, now I deserve a good dinner. So there it is. Bayan work is just as important as Tabla. We sometimes just kind of concentrate on the Tabla, and I've seen Tabla students practicing and their eyes are on the Tabla. So it's like watching the Tabla. This guy is like, oh, secondary. Okay, he just needs to get one, and that's it. No, it involves and it works, right? Work and in tandem and be an equal participant. In other words, become legitimate. So I think that's important to be able to get a good tone on the Bayan, is to develop the strength in your wrist, the strength in your fingers, and not be shy from exerting pressure, strength and weight onto your instrument. And so keep that in mind, and keep in mind the resonance of the instrument. That's why it's important to have a good Bayan which has nice resonance. If it has the resonance, then you can work with it. So you're not stuck in the low Bayan zone of Pandit Kishan Maharaj Ji, or a very high Bayan zone in order to be able to coax resonance out of it, but somewhere in the middle where you have enough resonance, but it requires a legitimate input of strength to be able to extract the sound out of the instrument. And so it becomes what they call something like a gatte ka baj, and that's it. I remember in Mahim, where I grew up, there was a tin ka chali meaning like a low income colony where all the tin walas lived. These are the ones who would be beating up the pots, the tin pots, what they call kali. At the edge of that, as you entered the gate, just on the right side, Nizamuddin Khan Sahib used to live in a small little place. Now you've got 30 pots, hammer on the pots going teek, 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 and the din is so loud you can hear it 5 blocks away. You arrive there and you're standing outside Khan Sahib's door and you can hear him practicing with that din going on. No sound system. He's just practicing in there on a basic tabla, but he had the hands to be able to do that. My father used to say that his Guru Mian Qadir Bakhsh used to make him sit in winter with the windows open in Punjab, where the temperatures dropped to 6-5 degrees and so on, with no shirt, open body, and play, because the hands were so cold and it's so hard to play. They used to crack open. He said they used to bleed. But the whole idea was to be able to develop the strength no matter what the weather, no matter what the environment around you, and be able to be ready with a warm hand to be able to get on the tabla and fly. So that's important. Okay, now I'm going to play a little bit, and I just wanted to say that next Friday I'm going to invite my definitely much better half and a fine, incredible Kathak dancer, Tony, my wife, to join me and we will talk about dance and tabla, and see how that relationship developed, because most of my early days were spent